But of course, Ryan, the first game that matters to us the most is Notre Dame against Navy. And when you look at this game, what we're not going to do is kind of tell y'all, oh, this is a tough game and this is Navy's a really good team and a really good win and all that kind of stuff. They're not. They're 3-6. They're not a really good football team. But I actually think that's kind of a good thing for Notre Dame because it's going to be a test for them. Look, we know this team can get up for big games. We know it. Notre Dame is 4-1 against teams that either were or are ranked in the top 25. When it's a big game, this team gets ready. What we're going to learn this weekend, Ryan, is if for the first time all season, in all three phases of the game, if Notre Dame can get ready for an opponent that's beneath them, so to speak. Against UNLV, we saw the defense get ready for it, but I didn't love what I saw from the special teams and the offense. And there's been other games where we've seen the offense play better in those type of moments, but the defense did it. For the most part, they just haven't played good football against teams that they can't – the magnitude of the game doesn't get them going. They're going to have a chance to do that against Navy, Ryan. And if they can, it's going to be another sign that this team is growing and growing and growing, getting closer to the football team that you and I thought they could be coming into the season.
There's already been a little bit of a getting over the hump situation with Notre Dame, kind of beating a Clemson team that had been a stickler to you in the past, a fully healthy team, a team that has full arsenal in their backfield and in their, just from their team in general. And now the next question is, can Notre Dame take advantage of a team that they should beat, and could they come ready and focus to play? We've seen instances in the past of teams that just kind of sleepwalk through these types of games, don't have the killer instinct. And that's the biggest thing for me this game, is that Notre Dame has a chance to show we are a different team than we have been, right? Like last week wasn't a fluke. Those last couple of games are not just admirations. Like this is a start to something, a dominance that you can see on this football team. So I think it's a big opportunity, Brian, to your point, right? Like it's a opportunity to show that you are moving in a different direction and you are going to take care of a team that you should dominate. Like you should dominate. There's no question about it. And this is a big opportunity, obviously, tomorrow for them.
I mean, when you look at this football team for Notre Dame, the thing we've talked about before, Ryan, when we've had to make predictions for games is I have no clue who this football team is. I have no idea which version of this Notre Dame team is going to show up. And I would argue that without question, the last two games have been the best back-to-back performances that we've seen from them. I would argue that the two best games we've seen Notre Dame play this year are probably Clemson and North Carolina are probably the two best that they've played individually. But I think they were much better against Syracuse. They were better against Clemson than they were North Carolina because they played good for 60 minutes. Whereas, North Carolina was kind of I'd say a 45-minute game, right? And then Notre Dame kind of let up a little bit. They didn't let up against Clemson. I thought they played well against BYU, but not great. They didn't play great against Syracuse either, but they played better against Syracuse than they played against BYU. Therefore, the last two games are the best we've seen. And that's coming off of a game against UNLV where, UNLV is not that good of a football team, but they did what they needed to do. And they dominated them. And look, UNLV is not worse than Marshall. UNLV is not necessarily that much worse than Stanford, if worse than Stanford. And, of course, we saw UNLV take on Cal, and UNLV went for 60 minutes and battled Cal to the very end of the game. And so they handled their business and played it a way where, even when they were sloppy at times, they still played well enough that they could blow UNLV out. So I think this is an opportunity for us to see growth. And it's not so much about Navy as much as it's about Notre Dame. And can this Notre Dame football team play with the maturity when the moment doesn't call for it? And those are the times you really find out the leadership and the heart of your team is, look, it's easier to get up for a Clemson game. And I think the way that Marcus Freeman and these coaches have run this program is they don't try to tamp down the energy and the emotion of this team the way the previous coach did. So it's a lot easier for them to get up for the big games, which is why you see this team, play with the emotion it did against Ohio State. And they didn't execute well, which is why they lost, but they certainly play with fire and passion. And Ohio State was just a better team that day. It's why they were up and dominated North Carolina. It's why they outplayed BYU for much of that game. It's why they dominated Syracuse. It's why they dominated Clemson. This team certainly can get up for big games. Where what has been lacking is, do they have the, maturity as a team and the focus and leadership as a team to kind of push themselves to focus on excellence when they're not in a situation where the opponent is as strong? And so I think those are interesting aspects to this game that make it sort of fascinating. And it's about, we said it's not necessarily about Navy. It's about Navy from the standpoint of they're not very good and Notre Dame knows it. There's no pretending it. There are things about them that make you kind of have to lock in a little bit defensively, especially because you got to really lock in on the triple option. But then also it's about just continued growth as you get into the next two games. These next two opportunities are chances for this football team to really get its mind right, to get its bodies right, to get its focus right, to do all the things that they need to do that teams in the past haven't necessarily been able to do. I mean, we've seen years in the past where Notre Dame has won in November, but they didn't necessarily look great at the end of the season. Last year I thought Notre Dame finished the year pretty strong. Even in November of 2020, it's a little weird because November was still kind of like normally where October would be because of the late start. We saw them in past years where they just kind of went out and beat bad teams and they just out talented people. And I think back to the 2015 season when they beat Boston College in Wake Forest, but it wasn't pretty. They just out talented them. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Notre Dame come out tomorrow and just out talent Navy, and that's the reason that they win by 3 touchdowns. I want to see a game where you kind of come out and you play with fire because you're excited to be playing together as a football team in a Notre Dame uniform. And that to me is the sign of a team that has really turned the corner. It's not even a 28-point win. It's that focus, it's that energy, it's that fire. And if they can do that, then I think this team has a chance to really turn the corner as a football team.